Hello, everyone. This is Getselious, and I'm here joined by Julia Minamata. I hope I'm not butchering that name.
No, you're fine. Minamata, I just say whatever. It's fine.
Fantastic. And if you may not know, you may have seen my recent review of Sam and Max on the YouTube page, and you guys may have seen them streaming. I'm a huge point and click enjoyer, and I have Julia right here to talk about her latest project, about herself, and particularly a Crimson Diamond. So, Julia, introduce yourself.
Yeah, hi. Yeah, I'm Julia Minamata. I'm the developer behind the Crimson Diamond, which is a cozy mystery adventure game. And I made it kind of on my own, although, of course, I had a lot of help from testers, and I have some patrons who were supporting me during that time. And most importantly, the amazing musician that was working on the project, Dan Polakar. So I do say that I'm a solo dev, but there's so many people around me that have been helping me and supporting me through these years.
Yeah. And I guess so. When I was doing research about you, I'm aware of a Crimson Diamond. I think I played a demo of it a while back. Like it was on
Mhm.
Next Fest in the early demo before that, I believe. I could
Mm.
timeline. And the one thing I need to ask is like I thought for a while that the studio of the game, oh, it's just your name, but now it is really just your name. So it's a backstory. You're not gonna call it just it's me. It's
Yeah, it's kind of funny because first of all, that Next Fest that you're mentioning was about like 3 years ago, I think. So
yeah,
you've
I see it. So yeah,
uh,
I was that's how much. Yeah,
so you've been following for a while. So thank you so much for following for that
yeah.
long. Which is not an uncommon thing I've heard from people actually. Like when I've gone to events or when I see people leave reviews on Steam. Not unusual for people to say I've been following this project for many years and excited that it's finally come out. And I just want to say thank you for people who have been super patient and following along. Um, As for what was this? Sorry, what's the second part? I'm
Oh yeah.
tired.
What?
I
So the studio is named after
oh
you.
yes.
Oh
Okay,
yeah.
yes.
I'm like, okay, so you are the studio.
Yes. Okay. So that with that, yeah, I've had discussions with like my other game dev friends about, some of them, incorporate or they become LLCs and
Yeah,
things. And they
exactly.
have like company names or, when you submit to a contest or you submit to a festival, they want to know what your studio name is. And I haven't really had the chance to like come. I'm bad. I'm so bad at coming up with names for things that I would just put my name, like there was a contest called Indie Series here in Toronto. Ubisoft hosted something called Indie Series, and they
Mhm.
have one in Toronto. In 2019, I submitted, and it was like down to the wire. And they just want your studio name. I'm like, I'm not gonna try to come up with a studio name like in 2 hours before I submit this thing.
Okay.
So I'm just gonna like put my name. So I'm just putting my name in on everything now. It's easier for me. Maybe I'll have a studio name in the future. I don't know, but for now, I'll just use my name.
You know what? I think you should have the studio name as in studio name trademark pending. Just put there. What's your studio name? Studio name. That should like
Mhm.
everyone know that. Oh, that's I knew it's you. It's just your studio name. Yeah, I'm studio name.
There has to be something called like TBA Incorporated or something.
Yeah,
Just
exactly. Me too. Yeah. And then eventually, like 10, 30 years down the line, you find the title, be like, oh my God, they finally did it. Like, we're so proud of you. Everyone's like clapping, everything.
or
Oh,
they just never do, and it becomes TBA Incorporated forever,
oh
and
God,
everyone's like
that's
wondering
right.
what it stands for or something.
That'd be great. So I want to talk to you that I think, I'm aware of, the Crimson Diamond is the first project that I'm aware of you've done. Have you worked on any other games in the past?
Yeah, well, mostly as an artist. I'm an artist first. That's kind of where I got my training. I went to school for art, for freelance
Hmm.
illustration. The other games that I've worked on have just been art stuff. I worked on pixel. It's all been pixel art, to like low res, limited palette
Hmm.
pixel art, which is I guess kind of my thing. I worked on Space Warlord Organ Trading Simulator with Strange Scaffold. I worked on Witch Strandings, also with Strange Scaffold, and Recommendation Dog, which is a playdate game that was made with Strange Scaffold, as well as Sweet Baby Incorporated. So those are all my things that I've done so far, and they're all super like low res pixel art. And then of course the Crimson Diamond is my first one that's kind of my own whole thing where I did everything else, well, except for the music, of course.
Well, except music, yeah.
Yeah.
The interesting part about the Crimson Diamond is like, so I think I tell everybody this, every developer. I'm a point and click person, but I never played any Sierra games. The
Hmm.
only Sierra game I actually fully played is probably the first Gabriel Knight game.
Good
And
choice.
yeah, it's look, it's that look. I'm as a Creole person, quotation mark. He
Ooh,
the Royals landed perfectly. Okay, I'll leave it as that
nice,
much.
nice.
Yeah, but I say that's the only one I actually played, and I tried playing some other text parser games. I tried playing the first Leisure Suit Larry. I
Hmm.
tried Police Quest. I tried Space Quest. They didn't really hit it for me as much. So I want to ask you this: why did you go for a direction for a text parser for the Crimson Diamond instead of, guess I would label a traditional point click game?
Right. Yeah. It's funny that I have to label it on Steam. I tag it as a point and click because when people hear that term, they have this idea in their head, which is pretty close to the kind of game that I actually have made. There's very little pointing and clicking, actually. If you actually want to play the game with almost no mouse interaction, you can do that. But yeah, the idea of why did I make it a text parser overall? What it comes down to, I think, is it is my favorite type of user interface for the player. There's something about it where I was thinking about it this morning, and I was thinking about it this way: the systems are not exposed in a text parser game. Your main method of interaction is this text parser, where it's kind of up to you to fill in what that's going to be, what that action is going to be. You don't have something like a verb coin where you're going to click on something and it's going to give you the things you can do, or a dialogue tree where it's going to tell you what topics you can talk about and things like that. It's very it's all kind of like secret and concealed in a way that is hopefully going to be something that's going to be alluring for people or compelling for people in a way that feels like there is unlimited possibility. Of course, it's very limited, but the feeling of that unlimited possibility, that feeling of putting something in a text parser and having it respond in a way that that the developer has handcrafted a response, taking what you were going to do into consideration and anticipating that action. That's a magical moment of connection for me between me and the actual player.
That's pretty cool, because it's like when I think of text parser games, and I would say my experience playing this is actually facts. I'm gonna lie, everybody. You now know when I played Leisure Suit Larry 1, I died because I couldn't open the door to Lefty's club. That actually happened. I couldn't die, and all because of how I would say I understand English, or I would say try to make the game interact. And I find, like, even when I tried other text parser games, such as, I would say I played the first Space Quest and I tried Police Quest-ish. It was okay, but I've always felt text parser games, it's a thing. I understand the appeal to it. And I guess I want to ask you this about text parser games. How did you think about solving those puzzles based on how many different ways people interpret words, I guess, in the English language or in language in general, right? Because as I mentioned, I'm an American Creole descent person, quotation mark, and the way I look at English is very different from, I say, a Northeastern American or a Southern American or even a Canadian American.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, that is the tricky part of text parsers. That's I totally acknowledge that as a kind of an obstacle in people enjoying this style of game. It's something I tried really hard to make as flexible as possible, although watching people stream the game on Twitch and elsewhere, I can see the places where I would love to improve on what I've already done. Because, yeah, it can be hard to anticipate how people are going to structure their sentences. And even something as simple as the object in the game with the most synonyms, which is waste paper basket. People call it a dustbin or trash can or bin.
Yeah.
So what do you call those things, that waste receptacle? What is your term for that when you use it?
Oh, I would say trash bin, trash. Garbage, yeah. Yeah, exactly. There's a lot of shorthand. As I go to Leisure Suit Larry, I died because I had to type in open door. I said open, and I was like, "What?" Yeah, things like that. So it was like a lot. Again, these are older text parser games, like the early days, and I understand that. So it's difficult, because to understand that, because I want to say, unless you're a speedrunner, which you probably have seen some people speedrun text parser games, they just put God knows whatever language.
Yeah. It's funny. I understand why people, when they try early text parser games, why people kind of bounce off of them. And a part of that is that when they were making these games, it was almost like they were in the early stages of game design, of what they were figuring out what was working, what wasn't working. And they were also somewhat I don't want to say restricted, but kind of in a way they were restricted by the technical limitations of what they were able to do. They had to fit on these little floppy disks that hold almost no information, and 1.44 megabytes or something, which means you don't have a lot of latitude to have a massive parser dictionary or something, which is something that I have because as a modern adventure game creator, I have this luxury of these tools that I have available to me where I'm not having to fit these, my game on a bunch of floppies. Someone told me that the Crimson Diamond would be about like 50 or 52 floppy disks if it actually had a
Oh
floppy.
Lord.
So I don't have to worry about this stuff, which means I can make as many synonyms as I want. I can add more as I want. When I want to add like a new synonym for garbage can, I can just do that and push it in a Steam update, and then people will just receive that. You don't have to worry about sending out people disks for patching all that stuff.
That's
That's
true. That's true.
so that's super super helpful. I really am fully taking advantage and trying to show people that the charms of the text parser that they might have enjoyed back in the day, like you can bring that forward into this modern era, and you can actually make it um, on its own merits. You can make it better than it could have been back in the time when we had all those technical limitations. The second part is the game actually has like text parser shortcuts, which kind of they even actually
Oh
had
wow.
this in the Sierra days. So, for instance, something like open door, which you mentioned, like you could do instead
Yeah.
of typing out "oh open door" the whole way, you can type O space D, and then that'll give you the same action. Or
Really? Oh my lord. It's funny because I was like, if I type in open, sometimes it wasn't open. Like, what did I do? Like, nothing happened. Like, what?
yeah, yeah.
Oh
So
my lord.
and even stuff like that where that specific case that you mentioned, it's part of the game design to help guide the player to the correct action. In my
Mhm.
I don't know if I do this in my game, probably not, but I mean if you just type in open, it might say, please, be more specific, or please
Right.
walk toward what you want to open or something. That type of a thing is like a game design solution toward making the game something that a player would be more able to interact with.
That's cool. That's cool to hear. And as you mentioned before, you worked on several games and other possibilities in different roles, such as arts, mostly in the arts, etc. What have you learned from those previous games that helped you during the making of the Crimson Diamond?
Working with people, I think. When I was
Mhm.
I was a freelance illustrator for 10 or so years before I started to get into game development, and that's a very very solo enterprise. And even
Yes.
what I do now is still a pretty solo enterprise, but like working with testers, working with other, working with PR folk and everything, it's just a thing, like a skill I had never really had to acquire because I spent most of my life working completely on my own. And even pre-COVID, I was working, from home and things like that. So
Hmm.
not having a super lot of like interaction professionally, and working on teams, which was my first experience with working on a team like that, was with Space Warlord. Was Yeah, it was a bit of a learning curve for me because I was so used to just doing everything, and then not having to either communicate what I wanted to do or what I am doing, or like follow other people's like structures and procedures. That was really really helpful because it also just in my own work, it helps me to be more organized and be more aware of how I communicate.
Hmm. That's good. That's very good to hear because you like working from a team aspect. Because I've seen a lot of solo devs in general just like lock in on themselves and that's
Hmm.
it, which
Hmm.
also sometimes also affect how they market or et cetera,
Yeah.
et cetera. But you're able to like working with people, you understand like, oh, hey, this is how this works, or you're more like one of the things is my personal opinion for this is my tip to any indie dev or any dev in general, or even art people. If you're working in a very independent field, be wary of your surroundings and people you interact with in a sense of like how you market yourself, how you test your game, etc. Because like if you only focus on yourself, your game impact is smaller because no one essentially knows who you are or is aware of your projects. Like I've seen you be all over the place. You were, I think I saw an IGN article with you. I saw you do interviews with several other people. You even want a guy who I watch. A shout out say, hey, hi, hi, One Short Eye. He's fan of your work.
Yay.
Seen you there. Yeah. So I've
Yeah.
seen you there too.
Yeah, I guess what's important to consider is when I say working with people, I don't just mean working with people on a contract or a job. I consider all of that working with people, which means, getting feedback from, players, going on other people's channels and doing interviews just like this, or
Mhm.
podcasts or anything like that, email interviews, anything like that. That's part of working with people. And it's so
Yeah.
important. And I do think that indie game developers, if you want, like, I want to make a living at this. This is my dream, is to
Yeah.
do that, and I hope I can do that, and we'll see what happens. But
Yeah.
a huge part of the job, like 50% of the job, is this the non-development stuff,
Yeah.
which I can understand is not for everybody. I can understand why some people hire PR all the way from like their game announcements. I
Yeah.
hired PR much later. I hired PR like maybe like 3 or 4 months before launch, which is actually quite late. It's not typical.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, I can understand if you're not the type of person like I do streaming. I stream on Twitch once a week.
Yeah.
I put the VODs up on YouTube and things like those things. Like not everyone's comfortable doing those things, and I guess it's really up to the individual what they're comfortable with actually doing. But I've been fortunate that I've eventually been able to develop like this real love for actually doing my streams. I really look forward to my Tuesdays and just doing stuff like this and chatting and meeting people and connecting with people. I love that stuff too. So I'm fortunate because I love. It's kind of, I guess it's called marketing and PR and stuff. I actually like that aspect as well as the development, and I think it really has helped me to launch the game well.
No, 100%. Like it's a thing like being the get interact and be a world around you because it's like a lot of because if you're only locked in your own bubble, you don't notice the things around you or what's happening or anything else. Like, and I think that's like one of the one of the little pitfalls that a lot of independent people, regardless if it's gaming, art, etc., fall into. So you got to like expand your view, try to work with people, interact, have enjoy what you're doing, etc. And that's really good. I guess one thing I want to talk to you about is that I'm assuming that you are more of a Sierra person. I am not. I am again. I'm a Lucas Art baby, and I'll leave it as that. And I notice a lot of similarities in your games to a lot of, I would say, some of the classic Sierra games that I'm aware of, such as Space Quest, Police Quest. Not Leo Suit Larry, because that game is a little too spicy, and I don't recommend you playing that. Please don't. But I also noticed it was a game that that was very similar to a game that I think you were inspired a lot. The Colonel's Bequest. Can you talk more about how those games or other games inspired this project, or at least your like how you look at text parser games or this genre?
Oh, sure. Yeah. It's funny that you mentioned you assuming that I was more into the Sierra games. And it's funny because growing up, I was terrified of the Sierra games. I
Oh,
had
really?
them, but I actually enjoyed playing the LucasArts games more because I was terrified of the deaths that Sierra had, where it was just so easy to die. Um, and that's why whenever anybody asks, I always say that my actual favorite adventure game is probably The Secret of Monkey Island, the EGA
Oh,
version.
classic. Yeah.
Yeah, because of course EGA, I'm big. That's the color palette that I'm using for the Crimson Diamond. It's just
Hmm.
the writing and the game design and the dialogue. The well, I said dialogue, puzzles, everything like that. Everything to me is absolutely top notch in that one. But I will say that yeah, in terms of aesthetics, like I actually like. I don't want to really call it the more realistic art
Yeah.
of the
Quotation.
Sierra
Yeah.
games because who can say that something that's 320 by 200 pixels and 16 colors is
Uh,
realistic. But LucasArts games kind of had like a more, cartoony, more exaggerated type of look
yeah.
to them.
It was a much like to be. This is my honest opinion. Lucas Art Cart games, and I would say growing up because this came out during the '90s. I was playing them. They felt like the Saturday morning cartoon of video.
Yes.
It's like
Yeah.
you pop it in, you finish it in an afternoon if you're good enough, or a Sunday, and that's it. A Sierra game is we're locked in. Like
Yeah.
start
Yeah.
getting your notepads. You're ready.
Yes. Yeah. I think I liked how the art kind of was somewhat more grounded in reality, for what it was worth in those days.
Yeah.
That's the part, and that's why mentioning this year games and mentioning something like the Colonel's Bequest, which was the biggest
Yeah.
aesthetic inspiration for me. That's kind of where, and not only that, like not only the style of the art where it was kind of somewhat more realistic, but even the setting of this creepy old house, which
Yes.
is gorgeously realized by Douglas Herring, the artist on the Colonel's Bequest. That was really what appealed to me was the look of it actually, but the gameplay aspect, I would have to say that my game is probably more like the LucasArts stuff versus the earlier Sierra stuff. Even though it's a text parser, there's not like any soft locks in the game. Like there's no like you can progress into the story to a certain point and then you'll be stuck because you didn't get something in chapter one. There's no you had to work for the deaths, so you get plenty of warning before. Well, for the most part, you get
Yeah.
plenty of warning for the deaths and things like. And there's not very many deaths either, unfortunately. But um, I would say that game design wise, I probably took more of a note from, and even up to as recent as Thimbleweed Park. Thimbleweed Park had like a in-game notebook that helped you track your
Yes.
objectives. I did that for the Crimson Diamond as well. So I would say that from a game design perspective, I probably looked more into the LucasArts camp, but for the look of it and the music, and I would say more of Sierra.
Oh, okay. So I guess I'll do a polite pitch to game. Hey, this game just look a Sierra game, but it's actually a LucasArts game meta. But no. But in a very serious, I think it's kind of cool. I think it's kind of cool because again, I never really had a chance to experience Sierra S or test parser games in a pure capacity, and I'm very excited about trying this game out in the future because it puts a lot of stuff I would say modernization into control. Like one of the things I would say I appreciate from developers like you, James Lightfoot, Dave Gilbert, and Franz Gonzalez is that all of you have made a way to make point and click games good for modern audiences, not just for the hardcore or people who've been playing it for years. There's a lot of new people who could play your games and have the same fun experience without, I would say, some of the technological pratfalls or the lack of foresight back then. Like, hey, who knew that by those you mentioned typing O_D opens a door rather than open. Do you have any idea how frustrating that'd be in a modern era of video games? Like, oh yeah, there's a secret command you can use. Wait, we need a secret command. What's secret command?
Yeah, yeah, I think it's just wonderful because all of us do benefit from all this, decades of playing these older games and seeing what we liked about them or what we felt like maybe was a bit, not so desirable to put in our games. We have all these lessons that we can take and then, come up with our own stuff. I actually, when I stream on my Tuesday streams, I usually end up let's playing something else, do like retro games, and I've been so far playing exclusively EGA with the same color palette as Crimson Diamond adventure games, and especially stuff that I'd never played before, because there's tons of games that I'd never played from back in the day. And it's been super educational and super enjoyable because you get to see this incredible artwork, but you also get to see the designs that you think, oh, there's something really cool here, or something like, oh, I would never do this, and this is extremely painful. Like some of the games have like limited inventory, like you can only carry so much. There's a game called Mortville Manor where you can only ask it's a mystery game, and you can only ask like each character like 5 or 6 questions before they just clam up on you and say you're being too curious. Yeah, so that type of thing, I'm like, okay, I'm never going to, and I probably would never have, but it's just nice to, you can see a real world example of something where I'm personally trying to play this game, and I feel like this is something that I know that it's not something I would want to subject my players to.
Right. And I think it's just part about that's like understanding that as well. It's like, because it's like, to me, I have my personal belief when it comes to a lot of games, and there's some designs in the past that are there, but understand why they work. Don't just copy it to the future, because it is cool, but look, I'll be honest with you, as somebody who played platformers, there's a reason why we invented the double jump. Okay, the double jump exists for a reason. Let's not pretend we're all hitting those sick jumps. All right?
Or having jumps where you can like change the direction in the air type of thing. Like,
exactly,
this is not physics. This is like for fun.
Exactly, yeah. And I guess another way to describe it is like, I want to give this guy a shout out to a friend of the stream, Robot Spacer. He plays a lot of older point click adventure games. And I think it was for a month, he was playing a game called Mapiti Island, but I thought was really cool because I never played a detective and mystery game like that before. And I was like, these are ideas that I think could be put in the modern way. And I've seen modern games do it in a different way, like visual novel detective games or something else. And I think it's a cool idea if bring Back to the Future. But yeah, we have decades, like the point and click space have these 2 or 3 decades of game design experience we could just pluck or think of putting it in a way. So like I said, people like you, people I mentioned like Lightfoot, James Lightfoot, Francis Gonzalez, Dave Gilbert, and a lot of you newer, point and click devs are really, really like, I would call renaissancing like a lot of cool ideas from the past and making it accessible for now. So I really appreciate you guys for doing that. And I guess I want to ask a question, a little more of that. I want to ask, how is the process of doing something like that? And how do you process of try to modernize older mechanics in your games? And how did you process that, putting it into the Crimson Diamond?
It definitely started with, like me watching, like I was watching Robot Space with PD Island as well. That playthrough, that epic playthrough. My gosh, it was incredible.
It was like 50 plus videos, yeah.
Yeah, like more than like 100, like around 150 hours. I think he said he spent like on and off stream to finish it. I will say that watching people play games while I'm working and stuff, and just seeing how they're playing them and seeing what works for them, what doesn't work is good. But it's of course even better if you actually try to play it yourself, because you're actually in that seat of actually physically what's going on and what is actually the pain points and things like that. So you mentioned you take certain things like, oh, I like this from this game, I like how they did this, and you kind of take those things. I did that with the Colonel's Bequest. I said, okay, these are the things I like about the Colonel's Bequest, these are the things I find stressful about the Colonel's Bequest, and I'm not going to do those things, but I'm going to pick out these things. And that was definitely the starting point for actually designing the game. And as well, just my own personal philosophy of a game that waits is what I've been saying. A game that's patient with you. A game that's more like a book than a movie is how I approached it. Where there is a pause button in the game, but that was a very late addition because you don't really need one. Nothing in the game is happening, almost nothing. There's one thing at the very end that's a bit time sensitive, but not really. Most of the game is you just can stop. You can walk away from it at any point. You can come back. Nothing's happened. You could be in the middle of a conversation. Like my dialogue boxes are not cleared on timers. You have to physically press enter or whatever to clear that text box or that dialogue box. At any point, you can just get up out of your chair. You can wander around. You can do whatever you need to do. Even the Twitch streamers also really appreciate the fact that the dialogue boxes aren't on timers, because you are setting the pace for that. And part of that even is I don't have voice acting in the game either. And I mean, there's so many reasons for that. One of them being that the era of this type of game didn't have voice acting.
Right.
Another thing is cost and labor, like those things, and expertise, like so much of that stuff. So that's another reason. But another reason is for me, I don't actually listen a lot to voices in games, because it's another aspect of making my own pace, where I'm reading things at my own pace. I don't feel like I have to keep up with whatever's going on. And I don't know if that's just a me thing, but just for me, I actually love hearing people do their own voices in the games. Like when I watch Twitch streams, I think that's wonderful.
I do that occasionally for some of games I play on stream, but I find that fun as well. And and I guess one more question to ask you. This is probably something that you've been saying a lot. Hopefully, to find to my audience, what is EGA?
All right. Okay. EGA is okay. The easy way to explain it is EGA is a very specific color palette of 16 colors, and that those 16 colors were something that were a very signature of a very specific era in games, probably like 1989-ish, maybe to maybe 1992 or 93 or something, where games had this very specific color palette. They could shift the colors, but a lot of games just went with that default color palette of that specific 16. And it's a weird palette. It's super bright. There's nothing that's remotely realistic about flesh tones of any kind. It's all very, very, very bright. But you can find a lot of old Sierra games use this. LucasArts adventure games as well. A lot of games did. Apogee had some wonderful platformers like Commander Keen and Biomenace, things like that. It's just a very specific color palette that when I use it, when other developers use it, it immediately evokes that era. And that's what I think is kind of the magic of specific color palettes. You think about sepia tone photographs. You look at them and you immediately think, oh, that's old. Or in movies when they have a sequence that's in black and white, you're like, okay, that's in the past. When you see something that's this particular color palette, if you are familiar with that color palette, you're like, oh, this brings me back. It's like magic. It immediately kind of brings you back to that era. Although I will say that what I also love is my game is primarily, of course, targeted to people who have those same feelings that I have when I look at this color palette when they play a text parser. But what I actually also really love is when someone who did not grow up with this stuff, they see the EGA colors, or they play the text parser in the game, and they actually say, you know what, I've never played something like this before, but I'm really enjoying myself. Or I've never seen art like this before, but this is really cool. Like that to me is awesome, because I feel like there is something to these things that is not just nostalgia. I think there is something that has value and interest for people.
The thing about the EGA color games like yourself, there's let's see, whatever. Those games look, compared to other pixel color games, whatever, they look so weird off brand, but it's intriguing how off brand they are. Like I've seen, I think I've seen some rooms or levels in a Colonel's Bequest where it looks almost, it's like, I think it's a scene where the room can get killed by the chandelier, but everything's near pastel colors. And it's like, why is this room so oddly bright? And I can die right here.
Yes.
Why?
It's the brightest of the bright. I even think I've heard tell that it was not artists who created this palette. It was a bunch of programmers or engineers, and it has to do with hex values. It has to do with like very, very technical things, and they just pumped it out with just as math. It was like a weird mathematical palette.
Oh my lord!
With no real consideration for aesthetics. And the artists that had to work with it at the time, they did not like it. Like you talk to Mark Ferrari, he did not like it. Mark Ferrari worked on, of course, a lot of LucasArts games. Douglas Herring didn't like it as well, who was, of course, worked on Sierra games, because they thought these are these awful limitations that I don't want to have, because they were traditional artists and they were not used to those limitations. But as a kid growing up in those times, I just thought they were, cool. Like that. I did not see the frustration because I didn't make the game. It was nothing but joy for me.
It's like a different perspective between the art and the artist and the consumer and everything. And I think I understand what you said about the Sierra art games coming to me. You said earlier. I think it's because Sierra games had this really cool, distinct portrait art style when they have portrait characters, which I want to give a shout out to Francisco and Dave Gilbert for adding portrait art in their game when characters talk. I always thought that was cool. I haven't seen that in a long time for someone who play point click games. I was like, that's it. That's the portrait art. That's because like in the non-EGA versions of Monkey Island, or at least the other ones, you don't really have a portrait art because everything is animated at that point. Like a perfect example would be the third Monkey Island game. I think it's Curse of Monkey Island, the third game, where it's just fully animated, which everybody who worked on that game, you did a bunch of work. I am sorry about the suffering about that, because I've heard some stories about the animators like going crazy to animate, the dancing animation from the pirate jingle and the guy versus with Chuck. Yeah.
I love portrait art as well, and it's funny because a lot of like the Colonel's Bequest did not have that type of portrait art, where like when you're talking to people and like you see characters.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no.
They didn't actually have that, and that's another example of me picking stuff out that I like from all games and just bringing it into my own games. Like those EGA games did not have graphical inventories like my game has a graphical inventory, like you would see more in a VGA Sierra game, for instance. But I like that. I like the way that looks, and I like the way how that plays. I just kind of grabbed what I wanted and just pulled it into what I was making.
Right. And I guess while we're winding on this interview, I need to ask you a serious question. What other point-click games have you been playing lately? Like now that your game is fully out and everything, have you had a chance to get that backlog up?
Oh my goodness! Well, part of the reason why I started doing Let's Plays on my channel is because I was not getting around to playing games at all. Which I think that's a common story for a lot of developers, and that's kind of why I started doing that. So which is why I've gotten a chance to play. I kind of wrote down what I've been playing over. I've been streaming for about 4 years, and I've been able to get through like maybe a dozen games from beginning to end because I got to stream them, and that was really helpful. But I am looking forward. There's lots of things I'm looking forward to. I actually, the one that came top of my head, which is not even an adventure game, so my apologies, is I backed Scald, the Black Priory, I believe it's called. So Scald. And it's beautiful art. It's called Skald, and I forget what the rest of the title is. But I backed it ages ago, and it has since come out, and it came out a while ago, and I just haven't got around to playing it. It's just gorgeous. The color palette is incredible. It's not EGA, but it's a very limited color palette.
Are you talking about Scald? The against the Black.
Yes.
Oh, I have this game. I purchased it because I'm a huge sucker for the old school CRPG games. I grew up playing some of them, and that I have to give credit to. Hey, Larian Studios, they can make Baldur's Gate cool now, so people can start making more CRPG games. So I got the game. It is very fun. There are at least multiple ways to play the game in a non-combat or a combat way.
Awesome.
Which is a little bit better than, I would say, Baldur's Gate 3. Again, Baldur's Gate 3, no offense to it, it does a good job, but the amount of options are kind of limited. Like how to put this? There is no combat play style in that game. You have to take a fight. Some fights you have to take. That's it. But Skull, there are ways to avoid entire swaths of fighting.
Nice.
Entire waves based on how well you can solve the puzzle with diplomacy or things. So
I didn't know that. That's very exciting.
There. I'm not going to say it. Little spoiler, but that's it. Yeah, Skull is fun. I would recommend it highly.
Yeah, I cannot wait to get into that. It's just one of the many things I want to get into. After my launch stuff settles down, and like I might, the updates for the biggest bugs people are playing settles down. So that one is the one that came top of my head that's been released, that I've just been like looking at and like, oh, soon I'll get to you.
Soon, yeah. Oh Lord. And I guess the final question I need to ask you for stream: what type of game could you make if you could no longer make point-click adventure games? If you couldn't make point-click adventure games, what game genre would you be interested in?
You know what? I think that's an easy answer considering what we just talked about. I would probably do a CRPG, because those ones also can have like a fair amount of story and character development, like narrative character development, like stats. If I was a better programmer, then I think I might try that. I actually, that was my second favorite genre growing up, was CRPG.
Oh, wow. So I guess you love, like, I would say the OG Baldur's Gate and some of the other, like, I would say before then be the Mud RPG era, which I haven't seen a Mud in a long time.
It's funny that there's some things where I just totally missed the boat on it. Like I have Baldur's Gate 2, but I haven't really played it super that much. I was more like of a wizardry person. Like I played a lot of Wizardry 7, a lot of Wizardry 8.
Okay.
I also totally missed the boat on Ultima, although I did load up on my machine at some point like Ultima 7, but with the Exalt add-ons, which I set it up and then I just never got around to it. The problem with, of course, the problem and the good thing with CRPGs is that they're meaty. Like a lot of them are quite meaty and they take a lot of time to get through. Which is why kind of adventure games are nice, because most of them are not going to take like hundreds of hours to play. But I really back in the day I used to really enjoy them. Played a lot of Daggerfall, Morrowind. What else? Yeah, stuff like that. But my absolute two, I would say my favorite would have been Wizardry 7 and Wizardry 8 were my two that I loved the most.
Oh my lord.
Oh, you know what? Dark Sun as well. Dark Sun Shattered Lands. Or Dark Sun. Which is the first one? Dark Sun Wake of the Ravager or Shattered Lands? Which one's the first one?
Oh my lord, it's been a while. I think it's Shadowlands. You correct me in the comment section below, chat. I think it was, yeah. Yeah.
I love that game. I never played it. I never finished it, but I played a lot of it and I loved it so much.
Yeah. Some of the modern CRPGs are really good as well. Outside of Baldur's Gate, people have told me great things about Pathfinder. My friends have been trying to get me to try Solasta. I heard that's really awesome.
Okay.
Those are two they told me to get into. If you haven't, the only game I would say stay away from is, it's not an insult, the Pillars of Eternity series.
Okay.
It is very, 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 very difficult. That one I can definitely attest to. Pillars of Eternity is very difficult. So I recommend. It's the least faint of heart.
Right.
And the last recommendation I would say is, if you haven't already, obviously there's, I don't know if call it a CRPG, but Disco Elysium is
it's
an experience.
Yeah, I did play that one. That one's a really good one.
Okay, it's an experience. Yeah,
I will say, like, usually I don't go for like the 3D stuff. I do like isometric or pixel art or something.
Okay.
Yeah. That's kind of what I go for more than like the 3D, but partially because my computer isn't really that strong, and so I can't really handle like a lot of that stuff. But also even just personally, I get lost really easily. So I think that the isometric view or just something 2D is easier for me to figure out than like something 3D.
Okay, yeah, it's like you have wandered into the level 50 area zone. You are now dead. Like,
I need things to be super clear. I'm not good at playing just about any type of a game, actually. And I get lost super easily. And I feel like those 3D games are just
understandable. I feel like if I was trying to convince you to play another 2D style game, I would say try the 2D OG isometric Zelda. These a new genre I'm calling these games Zelda-likes now.
Okay.
Games like Castaway, games like Mina. Those games are called Zelda-likes, where they're top-down isometric action adventure games.
Yes.
And they're not that hard to get lost in, so I would recommend that.
Yeah, Mina the Hollower, because I backed Mina the Hollower.
Mina the Hollower, that's one. Yeah, Mina the Hollower.
Yes, I backed that. And did that come out yet? I'm so embarrassed. Did that come out yet?
No, it did not. They're still working on it. We're good. You can still buy all the other Yacht Club games you did not buy. Oh, I'm sorry, all the other Shovel Knight add-ons. I just bought Pocket Dungeon, and it is fun, but it's also kicking my butt. But I enjoy it.
Crypto the Necrodancer, I did finish. So that's another kind of thing. I love that one.
That was a good one. Yeah, that one took a while for me to understand how to get into the rhythm.
Yeah, it's funny because I finished it with the guy that kicks the bombs, because he requires the least amount of rhythm, and I have like no rhythm, so that was the guy for me.
You thinking ahead of me. That's a good one. Oh my god. All right, so before we start gushing about other game archetypes and recommendations, I want to thank you for coming out to this interview. I really appreciate you stopping by. If you haven't already, if you please try out the Crimson Diamond. It's available, I believe, on Steam. And what else is it available on?
On Itch.io as well. And it's going to be available on Fireflower Games as well, but it isn't yet, hopefully next week.
Yep. All right, so in the future, be sure to follow Julie. Give us a shout out on the social media, how you can follow you.
Oh yeah, you can find me on Twitter. My name. I guess I'll spell it JuliaMinamata. That's me on Twitter. But you can also find me at thecrimsondiamond.com. Like, you'll find all my social links and stuff like that. And I stream on Tuesdays on Twitch. I'm _Maple Mystery. I stream on Tuesdays at 8 p.m. Eastern.
Yep. All right. Thank you so much for coming up to stream. Besides stream, sorry, the podcast. I'm too flustered because we can go on hours about stuff. So
sure.
I think I appreciate you coming out, and thank
Thank
you everyone
you.
for listening again. If you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, follow Julia on her mentioned social medias. Be sure to follow me as well at Twitter at Getselious, twitch.tv/Getselious, and catch you streaming on YouTube right here at the Outerhaven.